You two have already practiced this.
Right.
We.
Weave us together, weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together, weave us together, together in love. We are many textures, we are many colors, each one different from the other. But we are entwined with one another in one great tapestry. Weave us together, weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together, weave us together, together in love. We are different instruments playing our own melodies, each one to a different key. But we are all playing in harmony, in one great symphony. Weave us together, weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together, weave us together, together in love. We are different instruments playing our own melodies, each one tuning to a different key. But we are all playing in harmony, in one great symphony. Weave us together, weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together, weave us together, together in love. A moment ago, still we did not know our unity, only diversity. Now the light in thee breathes the light in thee, in one great family. Weave us together, weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together, weave us together, together in love.
And the only word that we had a difference of pronunciation was diversity.
Good morning. I see we have several people new here visiting today. I know we have Brian and Claudia, and I see a gentleman next to Brenda that I don't recognize. What's your name?
Jerry.
Jerry. Well, welcome, Jerry. Did you get your red heart?
Yes.
Well, good. We'll explain more about that in a moment. Is there anybody else visiting or new here today? Well, welcome everybody, and I want you to know that that things don't happen by accident. They don't just sort of fly in the window. It takes a lot of work. We have our prayer chaplains today is going to be Debbie Clay, And board member of the week is Mary Ellen. Our musician is Carol Glenn, and speaker Gail Gray. And youth ed champion, if we have any children today, will be Cindy. Hospitality host is Mary Ellen. And of course, we're all going to be the spick and span angels and help clean up. And of course, our technology guru that makes everything happen on the screen, and that, Mark Swing, and your lovely host, Nora. And then, so now it's time for our heart song.
This is an oldie that's been around a long time, and if I turn the page, I might even find the right song. When we get to the chorus, it is well with my soul, with my soul. So you can choose which part you want to do. When peace like a river upholds me each day, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot you have taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul. Oh God, speed the day that is filled with your light, when clouds are rolled back as a scroll. The trumpet shall sound, and the Lord shall appear. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well with my soul. You're a beautiful choir.
We do love our music here. So, for the Red Heart Welcome, if you are new today or watching online at Unity of Bremerton, we welcome you in the spirit of love. We want you to know, no matter where you are on your journey of faith, you are always welcome here. We know that the world is a better place when we are willing to share our hearts. We give you this red heart as a symbol of the steadfast spirit that lives within each of us, and we ask you to carry this symbol as a member of the Red Heart Fellowship. Let it be a reminder that the love of God is always with you, and to share your heart wherever you go. The red heart is a symbol of fellowship in the world and can spread love one heart at a time. Let the movement begin here. And if you are visiting with us for the first time or watching online for the first time, then we'd like you to watch or come back, because we do have a variety of speakers and get some diversity. So now for our announcements. Most of the things are in your bulletin. Many of them are. On September 13th, on Thursday, is the 25th Annual Unity World Day of Prayer. Next Sunday, on the 16th, Reverend Sherry Schultz will be speaking with Michael Gray as our musician. And on the 17th, Millie will be doing a free workshop here, Heal Thyself, at 6:45 to 8:45. And she has flyers in the fellowship, or you can talk to her after service to get more information on that. On the 19th is the Peninsula Photo Club meeting from 6:30 to 8:30. So if you're interested in photography and learning more and just expanding your knowledge, then welcome to come. And on the 22nd is a Saturday, which is family fun night, and it is always fun. You can always laugh. Last time we played Bunko, and it was very nice. And then on Thursdays is the Course in Miracles from 7 to 8 with a love offering on that. And so now for our board meeting, our board report with Mary Ellen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So yesterday was the Manette Fest, and Joe allowed us to participate in a yard sale in his front yard, right next to all the goings-on, and take advantage of the foot traffic in the area. Thank you to those who donated items to be sold in the yard sale, and with the proceeds being donated to Unity of Bremerton. We collected $324.
Yay!
Thank you to Joe and Melinda for all of the help and for the use of the front yard, and all of those that also came yesterday. There was Nora and Millie and Ann and of course Joe and Melinda, and I came for a little bit. There was a few people that came and visited with us from the church, and I think I've hit everybody, the main ones that were there working, and they helped put things out and pack things up later, so they did a lot of work and pricing. So again, it was mentioned that Thursday, September 13th, is the 25th annual Unity World Day of Prayer, and they've posted the event on our Facebook page, and there'll be flyers in the fellowship area. We want to remind you that we're live streaming our service. We ask that you keep the conversation down because it is being picked up, especially during the candle lighting and paper burning. Also, please be sure your cell phones are off or on vibrate. We also want to remind everyone that prayer request forms are available in the pocket on the back of the seats. And you can put them in the prayer box up there, or put them in the offertory bag when it gets passed around. Chaplains are also available to pray with you after service on Sundays. Unity of North Kitsap has a weekly meditation Thursday, September 13th at 6 p.m. Our observance of the Unity World Day of Prayer starts at 6 p.m. in the sanctuary. Stay or show up to join Anna Welsh at 7 p.m. as she leads a special meditation to continue the energy and connections of this sacred time. Everyone is welcome. Meditations are held in the Fellowship Hall of Faith Episcopal in Poulsbo. Our craft fair bazaar is set for Saturday, November 17th. For those who have signed up, please start thinking about what you want to share or start creating the items that you want to sell. If you haven't already signed up, please do so on a sign-up sheet in the fellowship area. Please stop by the table in the fellowship area, as there are several other sign-up sheets that we have for events that are coming up. We have a variety of activities going on each month, and stay tuned for more events to be sure to sign up for our weekly e-blast newsletter. If you sign up for our weekly newsletter on our website or use the sign-up sheet in the fellowship area. The board met recently and decided the date for this year's annual congregational meeting will be Sunday, October 21st. Members will receive a postcard in the mail prior to the meeting. For information, more information will be provided as the date gets closer. As always, if you have suggestions, questions, or concerns, please ask a board member. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. So now we're going to light the Christ candle, which represents the divine light within each of us, and then we'll say our mission statement together. So our mission statement? We
We are welcoming community, supporting our mutual quest for spiritual truth.
And our invocation?
There is one presence and one power, active in the universe and in my life. God the good, omnipotent.
So now we're going to have a brief handshakes and hugs and greetings, remembering that long conversations can wait till fellowship after service.
But there's Scott. Yeah, we're close now. Hi, kid. Yes, it's right. Yeah, two brothers.
I haven't seen you forever. I have a sleeve. Oh, yeah,
How are you doing? We just set up chairs in the yard.
Beautiful honest
Peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got love like
know that there are motions that go with the song. So would you two stand up here and we'll go through it one more.
Oh, shucks. You said front row, Nora. That would be me.
Come on, you get to help me, you know this.
Do you know it? Sure. Come on up.
This is Sunday school.
For the kids.
You do whatever feels right. There's no
Kay Gray, who is Gail's wife, taught us this song years ago, and of course it came from camp. So we know. All right, here we go. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got, thank you, peace like a river. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got love like an ocean in my soul.
Come to Unity, the church of fun in its soul. Today's daily word is creative process. I saw a lot of that here. I am a divine expression of infinite creative energy. Symbolically, the 7 days of creation described in the Bible correspond to the 7 stages of the creative process. The book of Genesis also shares that humankind was created in the image of God. It stands reason then that I must be an expression of that same divine energy and an essential part of the creative process. As such, I birth divine ideas into tangible expression in this mortal experience. I have to repeat that sentence again. As such, I birth divine ideas into tangible expression in this mortal experience. The creative process is sparked by a vague restlessness, a dissatisfaction with what is. Ideas become manifest and clarity begins to take shape when I surrender to the process and affirm, I am a divine expression of creative energy. Let's say that together. I am a divine expression of infinite creative energy. Infinite creative energy. There's no limit, guys. From Genesis 1, verse 27. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Let's say it together. I am a divine expression of infinite creative energy. And that's God bless us.
This next song was written by a friend of ours. Very simple. Whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are beautiful, think on these things. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are wise, whatsoever things are wonderful, think on these things. Once again. Whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are beautiful, think on these things. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are wise, whatsoever things are wonderful, think on these things. This is a round. Oh. So let's try it. Let's have this half start and this half come in. Okay, here we go. Whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are beautiful, whatsoever things are beautiful, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are wonderful, things are things wonderful. One more time and about twice as loud. And we'll start with this half. And whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are beautiful, whatsoever things are beautiful, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are wise, whatsoever things are wonderful, whatsoever things are wonderful, think on these things again. Think on these things. Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, good morning.
Morning.
I think this is at the Nora Heights.
No.
Hey, you say that like it's a bad thing, stop
Well, my name is Dr. Gail Gray, and my subject is meeting adversity in spiritual ways. And I want to make sure I tell you that I've posted this talk on the web. And so if you want to know what I intended to say, you can go read it on the web. Sometimes I change things a little bit. We had a minister at our church, our Unity Church in Kingston, Robbie Fonstock, from about 2007 to about 2010. And a man by the name of John Walsh wrote a book about Reverend Robbie. Robbie was very active in Unity of Seattle and led the Course in Miracles group, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with Robbie. Robbie and I went to high school about the same time. He was a year ahead of me, so I knew him from high school. And so I want to read this part from the book. I think it bears well on today's talk. A friend of mine, this is John talking, a friend of mine, Robbie Fonstock, suffered a brain aneurysm and almost died. During a very slow, precarious recovery, doctors ordered Robbie to pursue a healthier lifestyle. High fiber, low fat, no alcohol. Prior to the aneurysm, Robbie enjoyed a delightful personal relationship with Mr. Alcohol. Quitting without support would be difficult, so Robbie decided to attend an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and see what AA had to offer. He asked me to come along to share, John, to come along to share any anxiety and embarrassment. I didn't feel comfortable, but how could you refuse a guy on the mend from a near-fatal illness? I owe you, he said. Meet me at St. Stephen's Church on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. I drove to the church in a torrential downpour. Sure, I got lost, but a convenient phone booth loomed in the mist, and I stopped to check the church address. Someone had torn that particular page from the phone book. I returned to my car feeling like a character in a predictable horror movie. Randomly selecting streets, I finally arrived at St. Stephen's Church. It was 5 minutes after 8 when I found the meeting in the basement. Approximately 50 men and women mingled, drank coffee, and chatted cheerfully. I took a seat and a deep breath and looked for Robbie. As they called the meeting to order, I realized Robbie was late and I had to maintain some guise of social maturity until he arrived. Immediately, a woman in the front of the room made eye contact and said, "I see we have a new member. Would you like to tell us your name and a little about yourself?" I promised to support Robbie, and so I plunged forward. "My name is John. I got drunk a few times in college and tried some recreational drugs. Now I consider myself a social drinker and try to stop after 3 beers, and..." The chairwoman interrupted gently. "I'm sorry," she said. "AA meets on Thursday night. This is choir practice." Well, as many of you know, I was an engineer for about 30 years at the shipyard, and I changed from being an engineer to being a mystic. And so I now introduce myself as a mystic, and many people are surprised when I say I'm a mystic, probably because they're not quite sure what a mystic is. One definition, one that I like, is a mystic is someone who values and cultivates a direct connection to the divine. So my clearest connection to the divine is through meditation, and that's been developed through meditation classes taught first by Carol Glenn's mother, and now Carol teaches those classes, and also through the Associated Meditation Group, the Elohim group, and I strongly recommend that you look into taking Carol's classes. And as a matter of fact, she has a class coming Friday, September 14th, starting at 9:30. Starting at 9:30 at her house in Suquamish, and so it takes most of the day Friday and quite a bit of the day on Saturday. And I'm sure Carol will be happy to. I think she has some handouts if you're interested, and she can answer questions. And I can tell you that over the many years, decades, that since I took that class, it's the best meditation class that I've found. And since meditation is my major connection, obviously I consider that to be very important. So I take time to meditate, and I pay close attention to what comes, because what happens isn't necessarily random. And I also know the divine can come through in many ways, so I try to pay attention. And sometimes I get an aha moment, an aha, like, oh, aha. And sometimes that moment later becomes very important to what's going on in my life. Well, in early February, I noticed there was blood in my urine, and one of my first thoughts was, this probably isn't good. It's interesting how we come out of our experience, out of our background, took travel groups to altitude, and one of the things you do when you go to altitude is you watch your urine, and if it gets very deep in color, indicates you're not drinking enough water. And so you need to drink more to avoid getting altitude sickness. So it's a very important thing. So when I first saw it, I thought, oh, I'm not drinking enough water. But after a while, I realized, no, it had a red tinge to it. Well, the medical community quickly discovered that I had a cancerous tumor in my bladder. They removed the bladder and started me on further treatment. And the cancer...
I think you meant remove the tumor, not the bladder.
Yes, remove the tumor. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank God they didn't. Anyway, that was kind of the next step. So I'm sorry.
She's a true friend.
So they removed the tumor and started me on further treatment. They found the cancer, which is the next line, was aggressive. And the doctor looked me in the eye and said, this cancer can kill you. So we need to fight it aggressively. So getting rid of this cancer and keeping it from coming back became my focus. I'd read a book, the Kitsap Library Book of the Year, The Smell of Other People's Houses. Really an unusual title, The Smell of Other People's Houses. And one of the people in the book didn't refer to cancer as cancer, but as the cancer. And I thought that was really unusual, but after some time I discovered this is common in indigenous cultures. And I decided that I was going to talk about what I had by calling it the cancer, because it was the specific one in a specific place in my body, and it was there for a specific reason or reasons. So I want to talk about 10 spiritual methods that I used after I first noticed blood. My first reaction was fear. And my reaction to adversity, and I want to talk about this in broader terms than cancer, I want to talk about this as adversity that we meet in life. So one of the things about fear is it's important, it has a lot of power, emotions have a lot of power, and it's important not to let it take over. So the first thing that I did was I used the violet flame of Saint Germain, violet, the color violet, to dissolve fear. So I would go into meditation and surround myself with the violet flame of Saint Germain. And this is very important. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. So the first step was to get rid of the fear, or at least greatly diminish it. The second thing I did was to use intuition for making decisions and to seek answers. Now, I've developed an active rather than passive intuitive method. By that I mean a lot of people's intuitive methods are how they feel about something, and it's more close to an emotion, which can become sometimes confusing. But I use an active method. Carol uses a very active method. She uses a pendulum. And so if you ever see Carol out with her pendulum, you'll know that she's using her intuitive method. But I also use numbers to measure the relative value of an answer. So I usually use 10 as satisfactory, and then I ask for a number that is related to what I'm thinking about. And for example, I was referred by my family doctor to a urologist. And so I thought, well, if a satisfactory urologist would be a 10, what's this guy for me? And the answer was a 30. So that felt really good. He scheduled me for surgery, and this happened really quickly, and I'm not a fan of surgery. I do everything I can to avoid it. And so I asked, what about this surgery? And on a scale of 1 to 10, for me, it was 100. So from then on, there was no hesitation that that's what I was going to do. So in college, I learned, in college engineering, I learned something that we called the shotgun approach. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with a shotgun shell, but instead of one bullet, there's just a whole lot of pellets. And that's the idea, is that you throw everything at a problem. That's what the shotgun approach is. So I decided, using the shotgun approach, to use my intuition to sort through the possibilities. Now, one thing about intuition is it's much faster than research and logic, and it's potentially much more accurate. And why is that? Well, that's because logic and research and things like that are about the known. But intuition covers both the known and the unknown. And the unknown is always much greater than the known. And another thing about intuition is that there are different effective treatments. In fact, there may be a treatment that's very effective for a lot of people. But because we're different, or because the cancer is different, that particular method might not be the right one for us, or the most effective one for us. Well, I had an aha moment a number of years ago when I heard about Dr. Dean Ornish's protocol. Dean Ornish developed this protocol for, first was people with heart disease. And then a while later, he tried it on a group of people with prostate cancer. And I know a man who was part of this study, so I learned a little from him, and he credits it with extending his life significantly. That protocol has 4 categories: meditation, diet, exercise, and social contact. Now, I'm telling you about this from talking to him and from just kind of what I've heard. I've not studied it formally or anything else, but sometimes with an aha moment, you're actually better to go with what information you have than to try and really dig into it and etc., but to go more with your intuition. So my routine became doing something in each category every day. And through intuition, I found that my most important of the 4 was diet. On a scale of 1 to 10, diet was 200. So I paid attention to my diet, and I started to use my intuition the following way. I decided that a 10 would be something which neither encouraged or discouraged the cancer, but below 10 encouraged it, and above 10 discouraged it, or maybe even killed it. And I started eating everything that I could that was at least a 10, but definitely above a 10. And as a result, I resulted in primarily a vegetarian diet, which actually is what Dean Ornish came up with in his study. But I came up with the fact that I only eat protein, or eat animal protein, through eggs, tuna, occasionally chicken. Other than that, I primarily eat vegetarian and primarily organic. Now, I want to emphasize that this is not based on theory or scientific studies. It's based on my intuition. So your answer might be different. You might have some different things. And there are some foods I found which rated much higher than just 11 or 12 or something. And they probably even killed the cancer that I had. And I ate them a lot. I really emphasized eating those. So those are two things I did. Third, I seek the light within. It's said by some sources that we were spun off as sparks of light from the divine, and that spark is the light inside. And I call this the soul essence, and I believe that it is who I really am. That the body is like an automobile. It gets me around. It eventually has an identity of its own. And older automobiles require more maintenance and may fail suddenly. So the body, in a similar way, can always fail, but chances increase as time goes by. I remember a joke I heard years ago, which I think we're all involved in, and that is a man jumps out of a 100-story building, and as he's passing the 50th floor, someone leads out and says, "How's it going?" He says, "Good so far." And that's kind of the way we all are here. We're all kind of in free fall. We kind of know what the end's going to be, but it's pretty good so far. So, while working as an engineer, I had a very important vision. I was seated in a meeting. We were sitting in a circle. This is a number of years ago, so a bunch of men, all of who I had a lot of respect for, very high integrity, very knowledgeable people. And I was the least senior employee there. In the Navy, that becomes quite important. And so my ego was kind of pumped up because they were involving me in this really big decision. And all of a sudden the room faded, and everywhere there was a person, there was a light. And I heard, this room, this building, these bodies, even this earth will all pass away. But this light is the only thing that will remain. And then the room kind of went from being faded to coming back into focus, and I thought, what was that? And I looked around and I realized I was the only one that heard it. It was, only for me. And over time, I eventually came to realize that this was kind of my mission, in a sense, was to find that light inside and to help others realize that that's who we really are. At least that's what I feel is, that's who I really am. So I seek that light within. And we talked about it in the song, right? Where's the peace? Where's the joy? Right? Where's the love? You know? I get so involved in, am I singing the right tune? Am I got the words right? Have I, whatever. Sometimes I forget to listen to, well, what is it really telling me? Well, about number 4, the fourth method I have, is some years ago, I did not seem to be making any spiritual headway. So in meditation, I asked for help. And I heard, you'll make no more spiritual headway until you do emotional healing. I thought, emotional healing? What's that? I guess I better find out what that is. So I sent out emails to my friends and spiritual friends and said, do you know anything about about emotional healing? And I got a number of responses back. And one that I found to be very useful was a book called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. And that has a table in it called Probable Feelings Causing Disease. And so when I have an adversity that includes disease, I go and look at that. And I found over time that oftentimes when I look at that list of, they call them emotions, they call them feelings, I would call them emotions, but something jumps out at me, something is in my life, and then I can go deal with that. Well, I looked at the list for cancer, and none of them jumped out, and I thought, well, that's interesting. But I did get an intuitive reading shortly thereafter, and the intuitive reading was that because I was holding in anger, not eliminating it, that this was leading to this cancerous growth. And that made sense to me because the bladder is about elimination. And so sounded good to me. Then I went back to the book and I looked at the list and it said, holding on to deep anger or resentment. So I've developed a meditation that I use to counter residual emotions, and I believe it has the potential to prevent disease. And that's the meditation that we'll do at the end of this talk. So almost off the subject, but before I forget, I have 2 CDs playing the didgeridoo and some with other musicians. Carol's singing's on there, and they're on the table just as you come in the door. And so if you have any questions about them or interested in them, be happy to talk to you about them. And one of the things I did, I have one CD that has to do with moving emotions and blockages, and I listen to that. It's not part of my list, but I listen to that almost every day when I was battling the cancer. So the 5th method I want to mention is being grateful. And I was grateful for my immune system. And some of you may have been here when I talked about the fact that we're moving into the golden age. The golden age is here. So I consciously would connect my immune system with that thought of the golden age and see it as operating well, whole, and performing just exactly what was needed for my health. The 6th method I used was I remembered to be happy. Strive to be happy in the moment. I remembered to connect to Source, to Spirit, to be grateful. And I remembered that I was focused on one aspect, my bladder, while tens of thousands of other things in my body were going just fine. And I was grateful that they were. I also reminded myself that the highest good might not be what I expected. So I would ask, pray, seek, be happy about that I'm moving into the highest good, recognizing that I might not recognize it when it came along. But there's good in everything. Sometimes, however, it takes a while of searching or passage of time before I find out where that good is and what the good is. One morning, not long ago, I was meditating and I heard, be happy. Why waste this happiness? And that was a new view for me, that in not being happy, I was kind of wasting that happiness, that opportunity. So why not be happy? So I want to tell you a story, and I brought some visuals with me. So these are different size bowls, and I was a little bit challenged. So I wanted this one here to be really big. But for practicality, being an engineer still, I brought one that was a little weird. But you can see we've got different size, I've got, say, 3 different bowls here. And I've got some salt. And so if I took this salt and I poured out let's say a tablespoon of salt, and I put a tablespoon in each of these bowls, and then I added warm water and dissolved the salt. So how would this bowl taste? Pretty salty. Okay. Well, how about this one? Not so salty. Okay, and then this one, assuming it's a really big bowl, hardly even notice it all, would you? So the salt represents trials, adversity, what comes into our lives. And one of the thoughts we have is, I'm a very spiritual person. I meditate every day, I'm really good, therefore I won't have adversity. Well, the adversity is like the salt. You're going to get the salt anyway, whether, whatever you're doing. So why am I doing this? That's because spirituality makes me a bigger bowl. The salt's going to come anyway. And when you're in fear, the bowl gets to be about this size. So one of the methods that I used was to remind myself that the spiritual life does not eliminate adversity, but allows us to become a bigger bowl. And I visualized myself as much bigger than the cancer. Anybody's looking for salt? Anybody's interested in salt? I was going to ask if anyone here had not had any adversity in their life, and I realized that'd be a waste of time. And that story about the salt in the bowls is one that Reverend Richard Levy, who also was very active in Seattle Unity, told many years ago. It was a teaching for the children, but it's remained with me decade after decade, that when something, adversity comes along, and I think, I was doing so good, I'm really, I'm going to church and I'm doing all these things, why is this happening to me? Why do I have this? And the answer is, oh yeah, that's the salt, and what I need to do is become a bigger vessel. Well, the 8th thing that I have to mention is that I was greatly encouraged in that there are lots of cancer survivors. What works for one, however, may not work for another. And a dear friend wrote, and I want to read this carefully, there will be a lot of information coming your way. Everyone has their story and their remedy. Your job is to uncover your own story. And I think this is very true and very much worth remembering. It's wonderful to have people that want to help, that want to present information. I'm here presenting my journey. Millie will be presenting a different way of healing. There are many, many ways of healing. Your task is to find your story, what works for you. And many years ago, I heard in meditation something that I try to remember, and that is, when you follow the path of others, you'll never find a new path. So sometimes we're called on to find a new path. Well, number 9, there were a number of things that happened to help me. Some were visions, guides, information from other people. And I'm very grateful for the prayers and good thoughts from so many people. I had people praying for me I didn't even know. It was amazing. And one of the things that we learned in Carol's meditation classes was that we can go to a dimension where we're more in contact with every being in the world and every being that has been. And when I went to that level, I could feel the power when I meditated. And so I'm very aware that your time, your effort that you spend in sending healing to other people is really meaningful. We may not be aware of it on the physical dimension, but this is only one dimension. There are many. Well, the last method I have is that I want to acknowledge I really don't know what is going on. My wife, Kate, doesn't like me to say this. She says, you know, when you get up in front and talk in front of people, you know, you're the expert, you're the person that's presenting the information. And that's what we grew up with in school. But really, I really don't know what's going on. Our culture would probably say that success is getting rid of the cancer. And I can tell you that I had that focus. But the ancient texts talk about 4 stages of life: the student, the householder, retirement, and renunciation. Now, you're probably familiar with the first 3 stages, but what is that 4th? Well, it's described as the stage in which we renounce all other pursuits and devote ourselves fully to cultivating spiritual maturity, including a profound peace of mind. So success might not be what we think. Maybe it's not really mainly about survival, but it's about taking an opportunity to move further into our spiritual journey. And isn't this what my starting joke was about? What is our goal? John thought he was successful in getting to AA, but actually he was successful in getting to choir practice. So I ask you, do we really know what is going on? And do we really know what success is? Perhaps the story about jumping out of a 100-story building is much more accurate. We know what the end is going, or we'll eventually get there. And it's really about our journey. Well, I presented 10 spiritual methods that I used, and these methods used are not just for the cancer, but I've used them for other adversity too. When presented with situations that were really tough, really difficult, I go back to, well, who really am I? Am I the car, or am I the driver? Am I the body, or am I the spiritual being, which Marilyn read so much about today, that we have this unlimited power. And the power is what? Peace like a river. We have peace, we have joy, we have love. I was listening. Pretty much everybody in here, with some help, remembered the words or whatever, knew the song, I think was familiar with it. But it's a far deeper, in fact, all of the songs we're singing today have much more of a deeper thought to them than just what we're used to. Stephen Covey said, before climbing the ladder of success, be sure that it is leaning against the right wall. Before climbing the ladder of success, be sure that it is leaning against the right wall. And a lot of times I discovered that I didn't really know the ladder that I was climbing. That I find out later that what I thought was my goal really turned out to be more valuable in a much different way. So these methods that I've listed, the methods that I've talked about, for me are very important. But again, your journey is to find what's important for you, find your story. Well, I hope that you had some aha moments during my talk today. And if you did have an aha moment, would you mind just raising your hand? And got more? Okay, got a few people. I discovered many years ago something that Reverend Richard Levy said is really true. One time he got up and he said, it's not what I have to say that's important, or not what I say that's important. It's what you hear. And I think every speaker has had a chance, certainly I have, of having people come up and tell them that they said something And you're pretty sure you never said that. But that's what they needed to hear. So if you're like I am, you're not particularly, your favorite thing is not particularly getting up and talking to people, take courage in the fact that everyone out there is going to hear something a little different. And what they hear is what's going to be important for them. So I'd like to lead you in what I call an emotional healing meditation. And I want to preface this by saying that this is something new, came up during my cancer journey, getting rid of the cancer. And so it's not something that I've done for years and I know lots of things about, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really interested if you have any feedback and interested if it helps you. And do I think this is a good meditation? Currently, I'm doing this every morning. What we seek is inside. There's an introductory portion here, so get comfortable, but don't go too deeply yet. What we seek is inside, what I like to call our soul essence. Our soul essence contains joy, love, peace, creativity, life force, and much more. How can I tell when I'm in touch with these? One way is that I feel them as a static energy. Not static, which means doesn't move, but ecstatic. E-C-S-T-A-T-I-C, ecstatic energy. For example, ecstatic joy or ecstatic life, and the more I focus on it, the more it blocks out everything else. I believe that this, and not the body, is part of what I really am. Now, you may have your own method, your own key, but I pass that on as what works for me. It is said that we have an emotional body, and that our emotional body can store the energy of the emotions that we experience. The purpose of this meditation is to displace the energy of the emotional body and charge it with the energy of the soul. So first we'll get in touch with our inner ecstatic joy, love, whatever comes up with you in the moment, and whatever clue that you have that is your inner self, and we'll allow that energy to wash over our emotional body. Remember that we are using our inner senses, and there are 5 or more, actually, inner senses that correspond to the outer senses. So we have the inner sense of sight, touch, hearing, taste, smell, knowing, things like that. And so, for example, the inner sense of sight is called clairvoyance. That means when you close your eyes, you see things. And usually one of these senses is stronger. So you may know that, for example, I know I'm clairsentient, which means I can feel things. And I don't get much in the way of pictures, but I can feel things. So if yours is sight, you might, when you're doing this exercise, see your energy body, your emotional body, changing, maybe changing color. If it's touch, you may feel that energy washing over it, that is you. If it's hearing, you may hear a sound, and you may hear that sound changing. I don't know what your clue will be, but pay attention and know that this is what is really happening, because intention is very powerful. So holding the intention of allowing your soul energy to displace the energy of your emotional body is a very powerful intention. And today I'll be using the didgeridoo to help dissolve any energy blocks and encourage energy flow. So the sound of the didgeridoo has a tendency to dissolve energy blocks. And so when those blocks are dissolved, the energy that's kind of bottled up can flow and can move. And I have no idea what energy that you have is ready to move or not. So I have no idea what may happen. But my intention is to help you with your intention of having those energies move. So just for some background, using my scale, I decided, well, I'm going to decide that 10 is kind of the top level of my emotional energy. I really don't want energy above that because it's going to be excess energy and could go into creating disease and creating problems. And so when I started this, I was like a 13 or a 14 or a 15, had plenty of energy to have other things happening. But after doing this meditation over time, I began to get down to, when I check it first thing in the morning, I'd be maybe a 3 or a 5 or a 6. I thought, oh, that's good. That's good. That energy is not being retained. I'm getting rid of it. And then I discovered that if I worked on it, I could get it to go negative. And so I haven't yet gotten up in the morning and had a negative one, but I have gotten up where I had like 2 or 3 instead of 7 or 8. So I know that energy that's left over from emotion is getting dissipated, is getting discharged. I did have a vision, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but one of my visions was that this tumor was like a flower, that it was rooted kind of in the soil, and then there's this kind of a stem, and then that tumor was kind of the flower. And I realized that I think that soil was the energy of emotion. And at least I was raised that if you can pull that weed out of the soil and get it out of the soil, it's going to die. And so that's my thought, is if I can eliminate that emotional energy, then I can eliminate what was causing this particular problem. And according to what I've studied and what I've heard and what I've experienced, a lot of the things we happen in life are driven by these emotions that we have, because they have very strong emotional energy. We're human, so we're going to have them, but we want that energy to dissipate. So for anyone who's not familiar with the didgeridoo, I'll play it for just a second here to kind of get us prepared. And if it's too loud, you can tell me to back up or whatever, because I'm going to circulate a little bit around you to help that energy move. So this is what it sounds like. Find a comfortable position, take a deep breath, and feel yourself relaxing. Take a second deep breath, and again, as you exhale, feel yourself relaxing even more. And then take a third deep breath, and letting it out at your own time and pace, relax and go within. Become aware of your inner essence. Maybe a static joy, static life force, ecstatic energy. You may see a light. Whatever it is, focus on what you're experiencing. And if you don't think you're experiencing anything, just know that you are getting in touch with your inner self. And as you focus on it, it'll increase. Now imagine your emotional body. And you might check to see if you have an impression of how energized it is. Allow your ecstatic essence, your soul, your basic energy to displace the energy in your emotional body. And that, for me, is just a matter of holding that intention and losing myself or my awareness, losing my awareness in that ecstatic energy. This morning, ecstatic joy. So allow your ecstatic energy to displace the energy in your emotional body. See, allow, imagine, create the change, perhaps so much that your emotional body becomes charged with your ecstatic energy, with your soul essence. Use whatever comes to your attention. When you're ready, finish with gratitude. Say a prayer of thankfulness. Whatever your tradition is, whatever you feel, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then when you're ready, just open your eyes. Well, the only feedback I've had so far on that meditation is my own, and it works great for me. The rest of you are on your own. If you're interested in the didgeridoo, if you have a feeling that this is the sound of the didgeridoo might be a way of healing, I'll mention that I'll be playing the didgeridoo at our meditation on September 20th. It's the same time as your Course in Miracles group here. It's on Thursday night, 7 o'clock. We meet at Faith Episcopal, which is right by Central Market in Paulsbo. And if you want to get an individual session, you can stick around after the meditation, and I'll be happy to play a little for you and see what happens. It's absolutely phenomenal to me what happens with the sound of the didgeridoo. And for some people, it's what makes an incredible difference. And for some people, it's just kind of nice to hear. So once again, we'd like to think that there is a magic pill that will solve everything. And the answer is once in a while there is. But most of the time, it's up to us to find what works for us. So thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Gail. There's so much in that. And as he says, you can see it online and his your website.
Oh, Serendipity Seminars. I have it's on the CDs, and I have a card with me, so if that seems like something that will help you on your journey, check with me.
To conclude with music, there were two songs that just came to mind so strongly, and I thought, when we sing together, it's much more fun than doing it all by myself. So because this came to me in the middle of the night, I printed out some song sheets. I'd love to have you join me. Let's do the impossible dream. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to triumph when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I lay to my rest, and the world will be better for this, that one man scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable stars. One more little thing I'd like to share, and that is, during World War II, in Scandinavia, those who wanted to support the Jewish people would wear safety pins, and if they saw someone in trouble, they would show the pins, they would help them. A friend of mine's dad was in the Danish resistance, and they helped thousands of Jewish people escape. And so we're thinking that in this day and age, there are also vulnerable people that need help. And so I have some pins you're most welcome to have, to take, to share.
Oh, that's.
I'll put them on the table. I'll put them on the tables.
When you were talking and you mentioned the ladder, I realized I should have had my ladder up against a wall. And it didn't matter which one, because either one would have been right. And I wouldn't be where I am today. But that's okay, because I guess there's a lesson in there somewhere. So now it's time for our offertory and candle lighting. And as you're preparing your tithes and love offerings today, think about how blessed you are. And as you're writing your check and giving your gift, send out your blessings out, and we will have candles to light and papers to burn. I will light that candle. And, you know, with falling off a ladder, I'm still aware of just how blessed I am, because it sure could have been worse.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so grateful.
Could we have Debbie and Mary Ellen? Let's say this together.
I give willingly, joyfully, and lovingly, knowing that God is the constant source of my supply. I give with graciousness and receive with gratitude.
Now it's time for our good news. To Cindy.
Just want to reiterate that Dr. Gale does have some CDs out in the fellowship area, so if you're interested, please take a look. They are available.
My good news is I got to see my grandkids on Wednesday this week. And did I spoil them? Oh, yeah. And I made Rice Krispie treats for the first time ever. Of course, they went home with the kids after eating ice cream.
There you go. Sugar them up and send them home.
Oh,
There you
yeah. And the other good news, other than the fact that we're all here.
There you go.
It's sunny out.
And cooler.
And cooler, yes. I like cooler. Well, then, and I'd like to remind you that Debbie will be back here by the windows over here to pray with anybody afterwards, and for good or for, just to be grateful or any prayer needs. And so now we'll do our peace song.
Peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. The light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is.